evening, everyone. I'm David Johnson of Transform Ed Consulting. And before we get started, let me give my thanks to my dear friend and colleague, Cassandra Williams, who is the brains behind Educational Innovation 360 Degrees. She allows us to use her channel in YouTube and on Facebook for our live chats. And you can see our list of services that we provide. And it's my pleasure to introduce our guest this evening, Hedreich. How are you today?
Hi there, everybody.
Hedreich, it's fun having you here. And you and I have been chatting just a little bit and getting to know each other. And I think you're funny.
You know, they say don't. I'm a middle school teacher, so we have to be funny. So
You have to be funny.
That's part of it right there. Yeah.
Well, let me formally introduce you. Hedreich Nichols, MED, of Arlington, Texas, is an author, speaker, and consultant helping educators and districts amplify the voices of all students. Through her consulting group, Small Bites, Hedreich helps campuses amplify student voices by focusing on systemic change and teacher support. Her 5 Cherry Lake trade titles, including What is Anti-Racism and Excellence in STEM, provide teachers with materials to help students understand structural inequities and explore diverse and sometimes missing narratives. Her award-winning solution tree title, Finding Your Blind Spots, provides educators with guiding principles to help them better serve all students. As a course designer and consultant for districts and educational organizations, Hedreich provides educators with inspiration and research-based strategies that can be immediately implemented to pave the way for better student outcomes. Hedreich earned her master's degree in educational technology at Texas A&M University. You've done a lot of things, ma'am. You've done a lot of things. And as I noted earlier, you didn't list your bachelor's degree here. So tell us what you studied in your undergraduate degree.
Interdisciplinary studies right here at Texas WGU.
Now, what does interdisciplinary studies include?
It's actually a pre-teachers prep program.
Okay. So then at which grade did you teach then?
Which grade did I teach? Oh gosh. I have taught kindergarten, first, second, sixth, seventh, and high school.
So you've done the whole K through 12 continuum.
Yeah, but honestly, I always come back to my love, middle school.
Middle school. Like you said, you're a middle school teacher and you're required to be funny.
That's it.
Now, earlier we were conversing about ed tech. So how do you use your ed tech now?
Well, that's kind of how I got into ed tech. I just realized quite a few years ago, actually, the different opportunities that ed tech provided beyond the classroom. And I didn't grow up in the generation that had an iPhone or, had computers in the classroom on the regular. And so I noticed that people were leaning in, but a lot of people were leaning way out, very much like, there's an article I mentioned in an article. It was right when the airplane came out. And people were saying, oh, this will never be anything. Who's going to go around flying? That's craziness. And look at us now. And that's kind of how ed tech has been and still is in some scenarios where people lean in and other people say, oh, those kids don't need to be on there. They need to learn cursive. And I'm thinking, are we really still printing out trifolds and packets? That's what we've done the last 100 years. Cars look different. Food, the way we eat is different. The way we exercise is different. Homes look different. Education needs to look different to
I agree with you
for the future.
Can we talk a little bit about your books? You have What is Anti-Racism, Excellence in STEM, and Finding Your Blind Spots. Tell us how you arrived at the desire, the need, or the place where you felt those books were appropriate for our current status in education.
I've always had a story to tell. I won my first writing award in the 3rd grade for a poem I wrote about being patriotic. I still remember it. It's probably still somewhere in a box of my grandmama's. But the books I write, especially for kids, I was approached by Cherry Lake Publishing in order to do a racial justice series. And this was in the wake of George Floyd's death, when people finally kind of were awakened to the fact that a lot of narratives are missing. You know, when we think of who are the math heroes, who are the science heroes, who are the classical music heroes, we almost always see old white men who are deceased. And we don't, a lot of those people are not people our students can connect to. And so by giving them other role models, we open up the pathway so that if they want to be an engineer, they can say, oh, I know an engineer who looks like me. I know a classical musician who looks like me. I know a mathematician who looks like me. And so that was kind of where I was, having a child in the school system in Texas. I wanted to be able to make sure he had what he needed.
So which of those books best speaks to that topic or to that concern?
Really all of them. The five for grades 4 to 8 are all about this. One about Harlem Renaissance. It talks about places like Tulsa, the Greenwood District. And but Tulsa was not an anomaly. There were many centers of Black.
Oh, I know.
You know, but how many of the people who you maybe consult with have never heard that? They only know the Tulsa burning, but they don't know the stories of Greenwood before the tragedy. So all of those are really a big part of narratives that need to be taught in our classrooms.
Well, Hedreich, there's another little tidbit here that I found interesting, and you have a background in music. Enlighten us on quickly, if you could, on your background in music.
Well, I came from a musical family. I am the fourth generation of 5 generations of musicians, and I sang and played from the time I was 8. I played earlier than that. So from about 4 or 5, I don't remember not singing, and sang all over the world, traveled a lot singing, have written things, CDs. It's on Spotify.
We're in the presence of great talent.
People always say that as though my books are not great talent. Hello. I have a Grammy nomination for music, but I have an Ippy Award for the
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ja, natürlich, ich spreche Deutsch.
Sie haben in der Schweiz gelebt.
Ja, ich habe in der Schweiz gelebt. Für etwa 15 Jahren habe ich auch unterrichtet.
15 Jahren?
15 Jahren. Dann habe ich dort auch unterrichtet. Musik eigentlich.
Musik?
Ja.
Ehrlich? Oh, so komisch. Du bist sehr, sehr interessant.
So in case anyone wants to know, we were just talking about, I lived in Switzerland 15 years and taught music there. So
that's right. Very, very impressive. Well, Hedreich, we have a topic for this evening: building the foundation for a school-driven learning environment, with 4 topics. And they all seem very, very interesting. So where would you like to begin?
Let's start at the last one.
Help teachers learn to move out of the way of student success. Very interesting.
Teacher, get out the way. Get out the way. Get out the way.
So how can teachers get out of the way?
You know, I think that we often want to keep order. We want to keep quiet. You know, the classroom was designed in rows and we walk in lines. It's designed to institutionalize. I hate to use that word, but it's kind of, we wanted to assimilate and institutionalize. And we want creative thinkers. We say we want creative thinkers and we want kids who can critically problem solve, but then we stick them in rows in classrooms and we talk the whole period. So a rethinking of that will really allow kids to become those creative thinkers and become those critical problem solvers that we want them to be. And they're going to guide us into a better future.
Now, of course, I've done various things within the world of education. And do you happen to know the history behind why classrooms are set up as they are?
I did not use the word institutionalized lightly.
Okay, that's right. And not just institutionalized, industrialized. Even the buildings were designed to look like little factories.
We wanted to produce little workers. We wanted to produce a labor force.
That was it.
And we don't have that anymore. So I really am looking forward to us waking up to the fact that that's the past.
Right. Now, here's another question regarding I'll call it classroom management or even behavior management for students. How do you feel about little kids lining up one behind the other on the way to the cafeteria or on the way to the bathroom or on the way to the library? How do you feel? Where do you stand on that?
Two things. I have enough experience to not have to have my kids that tight. We work it and work it and work it the first 2 or 3 weeks. They're scared to death to do anything other than what we decided we're going to do, and we're good. I do know that it takes 4 or 5 years at least generally to get to that place. So I understand if you can't get your kids to move from one place to another without causing chaos. Without that, I understand. But that should be it should be a last alternative. We ought to be able to move from one place to another without a bubble and a duck tail. And I'd love to see them, even if they have to be quiet. Let's hop to the cafeteria. Let's tiptoe. We're gonna all be little bears. Let's tiptoe to the playground. There's some ways to mix it up.
Now I'm looking at your agenda. Nurture relationships that support a collaborative classroom environment. What does a classroom teacher do with what you've described just now when his or her, that teacher's evaluation rests upon or partly upon classroom management and lining students up to get here and there?
It depends on really where you are. I always say do what you need to do to keep your job, because your being out of the building and out of a job is not going to benefit anyone. It's not going to benefit your students. Having said that, I would hope that you work in a building with administrators who listen and who are looking for creative ideas. And so I would say children are not designed to sit 8 hours a day. That's developmentally inappropriate. It's always been. So instead of having them do that, I'm doing this. If it's not working, I'll revisit it and we'll do it your way. But can we try it like this? I need about 2 weeks to get them used to it. And can we try it? And if it works, can I go with that? I would go with something like that.
Okay. You mentioned creativity. What is your definition of creativity?
Inside the classroom or just period?
Period. And then inside the classroom.
Let's talk about inside the classroom. I believe that students can show learning in many different ways. I was looking through some instructional materials and I saw that in a folder there were many worksheets with rows and rows of division problems. And I thought, oh my God, really? You can have kids play Foursquare. They can each put a division problem on the floor. And if you have the ball, you say that. So I just believe that if kids are given an opportunity to move, to be themselves, they can show what they learn a whole lot better than if they are in those boxes being pressed and formed into those boxes to show learning in a way that whoever wrote the assessment decides is the way to show learning. Harriet Tubman, by all accounts, was non-literate. No one would call her not intelligent or unsuccessful. So
I'm thinking back to my early years of teaching. The boy's name was Bobby, and he liked to fly. What should I have done with Bobby?
Bobby, I need you to, Bobby, we're going to go to the cafeteria. I need you to ensure you don't touch your friends. You do not touch any wall. You don't touch any decoration. And so you might have to pull your wings in and fly like this. You can fly like that once we get out. Does anybody want to fly with Bobby? Okay, great. We're going to have the flyers at the front, or the flyers going to be at the back, the hoppers in the middle, and the walkers in the front. Let's go.
Okay.
Do I care if he flies? But Bobby, you can't talk because other people are still learning. Okay, you have to fly silently like the birds. They usually don't talk while they're flying. I don't know if they do or not, but you know.
I had a teacher friend many years ago whose classroom rules was simply do not prevent others from learning. What do you think of that approach?
I think I had 8. 1 or 2 of them were important. We had computers, no food, no crumbs. But the number one most important rule, the only one I ever circled back to, was Well, I did do sit where you can do your best work, so no seating
Mhm.
charts. But the big ones, kindness and encouragement. You don't have to
Okay.
go on vacation with anybody. You don't have to sit with everybody or play with
Mhm.
everybody. But in this classroom, we support learning.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Okay.
And if you are kind, respectful, and encouraging to your peers, everything else is gravy.
Okay. Well, which next topic would you like to address?
Oh, put that back up there.
Oh, oh, you're going to make me do something that I'll lose everything. All right. We have nurture relationships that
Just
support a
pick one.
collaborative.
Listen, you pick one. You got it right
Okay.
there.
All right. So I touched it earlier. Nurture relationships that support a collaborative classroom environment. And when I spoke of it earlier, I used it to talk about the relationship between the teacher and the administration in the building. But I think you meant the relationship between the teacher and the students.
Absolutely.
So how does one nurture such a relationship?
Teacher and student to student, and what I just talked about,
Hmm.
when you have learning pods, you don't have to be, again, teachers, get out of the way. You don't have to manage every student in your classroom. You probably can. It's 25 or 30 of them. It's one of you.
Right.
So put together multi-ability groups, and let there be a leader at every one of those little tables, those little pods. And that person ensures that we're all staying on task. You got one who's keeping time. You got one who made sure they took notes for the teacher. Everybody has a function, and nobody's finished until everyone at that table is finished. And
Hmm.
if you don't know something, you ask two or three of the other managers. And
Hmm.
unless you've asked three people, don't come and ask me, because you guys can support each other.
So are you developing leadership skills within those young people?
Absolutely.
Hmm. Well, how do you start with that, or where do you begin?
You know, after about 6 or 8 weeks in, you
Uh-huh.
kind of know who those 4 or 5 people are.
Okay.
And that doesn't some of them will be your strong students, some of them will just be your focus students.
Hmm.
We always think of our high achievers as having leadership skills. That's not necessarily the case.
Mm.
But I taught middle school. I sent two or three of those kids outside, and I let them make the list, because I
Mhm.
had them 1 hour a day. They were together all day. They knew who not to sit together way better than I
Oh,
did. Because in my
okay.
class, there was not a lot of foolishness. So I didn't see a lot of foolishness.
Hmm.
But some teachers had some foolish. So they knew all
Hmm.
of the things, and they put together lists.
Hmm.
And it worked well. I mean, that was the best change that I made in my teaching career, was
Hmm.
to go to that kind of a model.
Well, how did you learn all those things? In the things, your degrees, your academic degrees. Did you go off on your own, and or even your master's thesis? What was that topic? How did you become an expert in
Oh my
in
God, what did I read on?
creating a student-driven learning environment?
I kid you not. I do not remember what I wrote on. I've written so many things, like 5 books, 6 books since then.
Right.
I have to go. And I just was looking through my stuff the other day.
Uh-huh.
Um, a lot of stuff on creative learning. I do remember that. I wrote a lot of things on
Uh-huh.
letting students taking the initiative. So that was
Uh-huh.
always my big thing. But
Uh-huh.
this model, I actually learned. I had a wonderful mentor, and the my boss in my dean in my on my campus. It
Hmm.
was something that he had done that I assured was not. I assured him that's not going to work. I don't know
Hmm.
what you're talking about. That's craziness. And
Hmm.
he said, "Well, just try it." And finally, I went ahead and said, "Okay." And it was the best change. He knows. Every time
Hmm.
I get to shout him out, Jarrell White, if you're listening, you the man.
Now, you did mention research-based approaches. Talk a little bit about the research materials that you read and or study or implement.
Honestly, I am such a researcher. Last week, I was working on an Edutopia article, and I
Mhm.
kind of live in JSTOR and EBSCO. Just, some people read books and articles. So I'm always looking to see what the next thing is. So I
Right.
can't mention a research. I know one. Walter Grayson is an amazing talent out of originally Monmouth University. Now he's in one of the flyover states. Please forgive me, I can't remember. But
Mhm.
his work is amazing. I don't know if you know the Wakanda syllabus, and a lot of his DEI work is just incredible.
Mhm.
What is her name? Culture pedagogy. Jennifer Gonzalez. She herself is actually a former classroom teacher, and is not an academician and researcher in that way, but she is a collector of researchers and forward thinking educators. So her podcast introduced me to a world that I didn't know much about. I didn't know that educators were doing. I thought I was just crazy by myself in my house, in my schoolhouse, coming up
Mhm.
with these ideas. And I found a group of like-minded educators across the country and actually across the globe. One teaches
Mhm.
in Dubai, one teaches in China. And so by getting to know those people and their bodies of work, that became a lot of practice research
Mhm.
because I like reading research papers.
Mhm.
But a lot of times what I find is what I read does not necessarily, you have an EDD, not a PhD.
Mhm.
And a lot of things that are written are for experts, but
Mhm.
they have not been put into practice. They have
Yeah,
not.
I like to use the term scholar practitioner.
Mhm.
Right. So we do the research, we know how to do the research, but our purpose is to implement or use that research in the classroom or in the schools or in the practical sense and the things that we actually do. Yeah.
And that makes
Well,
it
let's take
different.
another one of your topics here. So we have two remaining: develop trust in the creative, chaotic learning process and in productive struggle, and give students regular practice with independent work and with leadership. Which of those would you like to discuss?
The first.
Okay,
Read it
develop
out to them.
trust.
Develop. A lot of times, like you said, what if you have an evaluation coming up, and you want to make sure that your kids are all in rows and that they're quiet and they're well managed and well behaved, and that really doesn't show learning. You know what I mean? I have had, and I've been dinged, and I'm okay with it. I have been dinged for the mess because they were doing projects and it was loud and chaotic. They weren't disturbing anybody left and right, but they were working. But also, when the administrator went and said, "So what are you working on?" They said, "Oh, our learning objective is, and we're doing this so that we can show our learning this way." And she went, "Uh-huh. Hmm, okay." It's like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, you just want to ding me because you want to ding me. You mad because it's working." But it
Well,
was
did they meet the learning objective?
absolutely.
Okay,
As a matter of fact, that's
and they
still
did it in their own ways.
Yeah, we had
Mhm.
this particular project I absolutely love, and I will give it to you because believe it or not, if you can let it go, and I've given it to some other teachers, and they say, "But how do I know they'll be so different?" I said, "It's okay, they can be different." The project is basically what gets on your nerves. What is a problem that you want to solve?
Uh-huh.
So they said, like anything. So they had to write a whole process journal. They had to follow the design cycle. There were multi-steps, research involved, all of those things. But the product could be whatever solved the problem. So one boy took a Nike shoebox, a plastic bottle, and a straw, and he made a water dispenser because his mama always called him for a glass of water when he was gaming. And so I
Uh-huh.
had great projects. So yeah,
Right.
yeah. But
Yeah. Well, that's a demonstration of creativity.
it absolutely
Mhm.
is, and everybody showed I was really looking to see the process anyway. The
Uh-huh.
product was secondary,
Uh-huh.
but it was amazing to see how many variations on solving a problem at my house. One girl, her daddy let her take the socket out of the wall and put in a cardboard box to hide her money and her candy, and then put the wall socket back on. So she didn't get to bring her project. She simply brought a video of the project.
Describe that again, if you would.
Okay, so her dad helped her to take off the wall. I don't know what you call it. It's
The plate.
the plate. Yes,
Okay.
helped her take the plate off,
Right.
undid whatever the wires were, one of the plugs. He cut all of
No
that
kidding.
so that she could put a box on the plate and shove it back into the wall, and that way she could hide her money and her candy from her little brother.
That's a good one.
Isn't
That's
it?
a good. That's a very good one.
Yeah,
Creative as well.
yeah. Oh,
Now, I'm going to tell you. So I studied music, and I can point to books on my shelf. I just turned and I saw it right there. And of course, I took on learning. The cognitive processes and learning music. We discussed creativity versus innovation.
mm,
Creative, innovative.
hmm.
How do you differentiate the two?
I think in that project, I said I'm looking for creativity, but I'm also what I'm really looking for, what I will grade you on is an innovative solution. I don't want you to go to YouTube and create something that someone else or rip something that you've seen. I want you to come up with a solution. One girl built and I should have known she was coming for it because she gave me a scaled drawing in the 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And her father had MS. And she said it was hard for him to take his socks off. So she took a blue bin, the kind of bin that you store things in, and she cut out holes and made a thing where he could put his foot in and pull it out. It would take the sock off, and it had wheels and a handle, so he wouldn't have to pick anything up. And he could take it to the laundry room.
And which grade was the student?
6th grade.
6th grade? Okay.
Yes. Innovative. She was also the student who said, instead of algebra, and she was brilliant. Instead of algebra, we need to learn about interpersonal relationships. So if you're a teacher and you're listening, out of the mouths of babes.
That's good. That's good. All right, we have one more topic. It's give students regular practice with independent work and with leadership.
So that kind of where we talked a little bit about leadership. I'm going to go straight to independent practice. If you have a 45 to 60, especially 45 minutes is tight, but if you have a 60 to 90 minute block, build in 20 to 30 minutes of silent independent work time, because kids have to have some downtime to focus. You know, being in a room with 20 other people and learning and doing something is difficult. And we don't think about how hard it is to concentrate when, you know, every 5 minutes, somebody's asking another question. And so just shutting it down, put on some quiet music, lower those awful lights, and, you know, have some softer lighting in your room, because we don't even talk about learning design of the classroom, physical design, and ensure that kids have some time to just calm down and get whatever needs to be done for that day done.
All right, Hedreich, I'm going to hit you. Would you play music in such a classroom, in such a setting?
I did.
Now, see, I argue that music is intelligence as well. And to have music playing while you're trying to work is like having two people talk in your ear, one in this ear and one in that ear. So how does one concentrate?
Well, it depends. I chose again, research. I looked to see what kinds of music, what kinds of sounds were good for learning and support learning, and what kinds of sounds do not. And I had an instrumental, guitar, and cello playlist. And so it was soft, and I played only that playlist. So it wasn't, tomorrow, you didn't have to think about what it was going to be, because you knew the same stuff is coming every day. So it is literally background noise. A lot of that, I will tell you.
Well, background noise would be white or pink noise.
Right, yeah, but that's annoying in that setting. But the other thing is, being in a room with 20, 30 people and dead silence, that's awkward. And I like silence. At my house, I don't have background noise. I don't like it if I'm reading, especially if I'm doing something. But I do find that in that setting, it was weird. And so I said, okay. So I went with that. But yeah.
Well, I have some other thoughts on that.
Don't play the pop playlist.
It seems it's time for us to wrap up, Hedreich. Oh, I'm so sorry. So look, we've talked about lots of things here, and you have a wealth of information. What would be the takeaway you would like people to have from your and my conversation, or from your wide range of knowledge?
I say, move, teacher, get out the way. That's my big takeaway. Don't be afraid of the productive struggle. Don't be afraid to put some buffers between you and students, so that they ask 3 before you ask me is a wonderful thing. Let kids support each other. Let them build those relationships among one another, you know, just peer to peer, not just peer to teacher. They should be connected to one another, because they're the ones who are going to keep going on, you know, without you. So you want those relationships to solidify as well. And that will give them fertile ground to, I can do this on my own. You build confidence, you build independence.
Okay. And how shall people contact you if they want to know more?
If you know how to spell my name, it's Hedreich. So it's Hedreich.com for the website, at Hedreich on Twitter, which is now X, at Hedreich Nichols on Instagram, Hedreich on Facebook, Hedreich on LinkedIn. And it used to be Hedreich on Anchor, but Anchor is now Spotify. So you just have to, actually, if you put in Hedreich and Spotify, I'll come up there too.
Well, thank you for being our guest this evening. Hedreich Nichols MED, Arlington, Texas, is an author, speaker, and consultant helping educators and districts amplify the voices of students. Thank you for being our guest. And again, thank you to Cassandra Williams, the brains behind Educational Innovation 360 Degrees. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye, everyone.